All right. So let us come back to the study of Romans. We started by sharing with us, the book of Romans basically started off by telling us that the pagan world have sinned against the Lord, right? And that's why it points to the need for the gospel because of the wrath of God. Chapter 2 tells us that even the moralists among us have sinned against God. Those people who taught us about moral, that they themselves had disqualified themselves as well because they too are guilty. Because the judgment of God is inside out. Our hearts fail us. Then, of course, we come to chapter 3, where basically it kind of sums up the whole thing, that all have sinned, all right? From the pagan world to the moralist and now to the Jews. We all have sinned against the Lord. All right? So from the various scriptures, the Jews are reminded that they too have sinned. And how can we be saved? We can only saved by the law of faith, not from the law of works. And then from there, Paul goes on to give us illustration. Chapter 4 is basically an illustration by two Old Testament characters, Abraham and David, how they lived by faith. God has initiated a way to him, and that way is a way of faith. So you can see chapter 4 is all about faith, all right? And then because the whole main idea is about faith, all right? From understanding faith to exercising faith to persevering in faith. Now, there are a few terms here by now we would have come across in the study of Romans: justification, sanctification, glorification. And we need to, because later we will come back to some of these terms as well. Justification basically means that we are saved from the penalty of sin. Right? We are justified, we are made right. Why? Because Jesus paid it all. We cannot do anything to earn justification. It is purely by the works of Jesus. Then we come to the second part, which is sanctification, which is all about, tonight chapter 7 is all about sanctification. Sanctification basically means that I'm saved from the power of sin. You don't have to kowtow to sin anymore. You don't have to submit to sin anymore because Jesus had broken the power of sin. How do you experience that? We'll cover that from chapter 7 to chapter 8. And then eventually we talk about glorification, which is saved from the presence of sin. Now, chapter 5 talk about the results of justification. When you are justified, when you are made right by God, what happened to you? You have peace, you have access to God, you have hope in God, you have the love of God, and you are sealed by the Spirit of God. And it goes on to tell us the reason of justification, because of Jesus. Then we move on to chapter 6. Chapter 6 tells us we have a new life. We have new life in God. And how do we live out that new life? So it is framed by two questions, all right? Must we sin because God abounds? Or may we sin because grace allows? All right, so basically there are two things that we need to take note in this new life. First is a principle of the new life. We have a new life because Jesus resurrected. We are dead to sin, but we are alive to God. And therefore, we must learn to present our bodies to the Lord. Second principle for us to take note of is that because about this new life, we have a new loyalty in life. Jesus must be our new master. And he gives us eternal life. Because the old master makes us work very hard, and the wages for us is death. But the new master is a good master. He gave us gift, the gift of a new life. Today we are in chapter 7. You see, chapter 6 talks about new life in God. And we are called to walk in the newness of life as a result of justification. The process of walking in this new life is called sanctification. Chapter 6 tells us we are saved from the penalty of sin. Chapter 8 tells us we are saved from the presence of sin. So the question is that, why don't we move from chapter 6 to chapter 8? The fact that we are free from the penalty of sin, and then move on to the fact that we can be free from the power of presence of sin. Why chapter 7? Chapter 7 is like a dampener, you know. It dampens your mood. Right? Chapter 6 tells us you are free. Then chapter 7 tells us you're not that free. So why chapter 7? I'd like to submit to us, chapter 7 is important because it is to give us a reality check. A reality check to show us that there are skeletons in our life. There are problems in our life. Things just don't go away just because you are justified. Just because you become a Christian does not mean your old self disappeared. That's why chapter 7 is important. It is show us that there are many things inside us that we need to allow God to come in. We need to let God come into our life and do something in our life. You see, the issue with many Christians is that we tend to relate to the law of God in two extremes. Because chapter 6, 7 talks a lot about the law of God. Christian tends to relate to the law of God in these two extremes. First, legalism. We reduce spirituality into do's and don'ts. Just think with me for a while. How do you define a spiritual person? Oh, Pastor Sally very spiritual. No, so how do you mean when you say he is spiritual? So some of us may define, oh, this person is spiritual because, do you know he pray every day? Then we're like, wow, he pray every day. Do you know he pray every day at 6 a.m.? Wow, they said, wow, 6 a.m., solid. Do you know that this other guy pray at 5 a.m.? Wow, 5 a.m. No, you don't know yet. This other lady, he pray at 3 a.m. He wake up every morning at 3 a.m. to pray for 3 hours. Then we're like, wow, we all worship here already. Then this other person come along. Do you know something? I pray from midnight onwards. I don't sleep. What's my point? My point is everything you do, someone can do better. Our measurement of better is corrupted. It's basically legalism. Wow, you carry this Bible, I carry a thicker Bible. Or you attend GTT, I attend MDT. You pray in tongues, I interpret tongues. No end. Basically, what's that? It's another shade of legalism at work. Spirituality is more than what we can do. Spirituality talks about what's in our hearts. All right? And therefore, there's a need for us to rewire our hearts. Now, so that's one extreme, legalism. So just in case we think that only the Pharisees are legalistic, I want you to know that many Christians in many churches are just as legalistic. Now, let me move on to the other extreme. The other extreme is known as licentiousness. All right? It basically means that the law does not apply anymore. I can do anything. There's a technical term for it. It's called antinomianism. Basically, it means anti-law. You're free from the Old Testament law. Walk in freedom. No need to care about the law. Just need to focus on the grace of God. Now, I'd like you to know that this is naive at best, heresy at worst. Because it is really anti the lawgiver himself. So at one end is legalism, on the other end is licentiousness. What is the correct way? The correct way is liberty. Walking from the inside out, from the true freedom you have in your heart, set free by God. So that's where we are aiming for, and that's why we need to look at Romans chapter 7. This is Romans chapter 7. What do you see? Remember, the word on Wednesday is not just come here, allow Pastor Sally to unpack the Bible for you. I hope that you also do your homework, read the chapter yourself, identify some of the repeated words. So tell me, what are some of the repeated words? Sorry? Law. No. Right? What else is repeated? There are many repeated words. Huh? Sin. Okay, what else? Commandment. Okay, what else? Now, I want to encourage you to, if you really practice noting some of the repeated words, things become very clear for you. All right? You can see that the word law spread throughout all the 25 verses. I'm going to show you how some part of it later, okay? But you look at verse 1 to verse 3, you notice there's one word repeated a few times. Husband. Do you realize that? Verse 1 to 3 talks about husband and wife. So of course, again, law covers all the 23 verses, 25 verses. Then you see the word death or die. Then you sin, of course. Now, do you notice something else that changed from chapter 7? Something significantly changed. The pronouns. Chapter 1 talks about they. Chapter 2 talks about you. Right? Chapter 3, 4, 5 talks about we. Then come to chapter 7, it says, talk about I. Do you realize that? Okay, just to, some of you didn't realize that, but that's why I want to interest you. Pay attention to the Bible. It's very exciting when you notice all these changes. Now, why did Paul use the pronoun I? From they to you to we, then now I. Because now it's very interesting. When you use the word I, the question some of us may have to ask is the I before conversion or is the I after conversion? Is he talking about the I about himself before he become a Christian? Or is it about the I after he become a Christian? This is huge significance for all of us. All right? So hold your horses, we'll unpack as we go along. Now just to show you, chapter 7 verse 1 starts with the law, it ends with the law. All right? So you can see that chapter 7 is about the relationship of the law concerning sin and death. Chapter 7 wrestles with the topic of the law. So we cannot run away from really pay attention to the law. What does it tell us about the law that has not been covered yet? So I'll do that with you as we go along. All right? Time is catching up, so I'm going to read faster for you. Okay, chapter 7, verse 1 to verse 3. Do you not know, brethren, for I'm speaking to those who know the law, meaning the Jews, that the law has jurisdiction over a person as long as he lives. For the married woman is bound by law to her husband while he is living. But if her husband dies, she is released from the law concerning the husband. So then, if while her husband is living, she joined to another man, she shall be called an adulteress. But if her husband dies, she is free from the law, so that she is not an adulteress, though she is joined to another man. So now, let's start with the first part. Do you not know? Now, if you have been following the scripture from chapter 6, you discover, do you not know, have repeated at least twice. In chapter 6, you go back to chapter 6, verse 3, verse 16. You can see the word, do you not know? You see, you must understand when Paul is writing to a lot of the Jews. He's trying to help them to say that, hey guys, we all study the Torah, we all study Judaism. There's something there. Now, when you say, do you not know? What is the implied understanding? That means you didn't know. You didn't pay attention. All right, so that's what he's trying to say, okay? That means you should know, but you don't. Now, what exactly about the law? Now, this first point I wanted to show you, it tells us something about the law. What is the limit of the law? It is only binding when we are alive. The law applies to us when we are alive. When we die, we are free from the law. When we die from the law, we are free to join Christ. So, are you still alive or have you died? I have been crucified with Christ, and it is no longer I who live, But the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself up for me. Galatians 2:20. So are you still alive? Hello? In Christ, we all have died to self. That's why I said, I have been crucified. Past tense, no. I've been crucified because the moment you say I'm a believer, remember we talked about baptism last week? You're baptized into his death, right? You rise with his life. So you have died with Jesus 2,000 years ago on the cross. So does the law apply to you? Still not sure. All right, so if you recognize that you have died to yourself, the law does not apply to you because you died with Jesus on the cross already. Right? Verse, I know you're still having some challenges. Don't worry, we unpack as we go along. Okay? Verse 4. Therefore, my brethren, you also were made to die to the law through the body of Christ, so that you might be joined to one another, to him who was raised from the dead, in order that we might bear fruit for God. For while we were in the flesh, the sinful passions which were aroused by the law were at work in the members of our body to bear fruit for death. But now we've been released from the law, having died to that which we were bound, so that we serve in the newness of the Spirit, not in the oldness of the letter. This is not written by Pastor Sengli. This is written by Paul himself. What did he say? Verse 6. Having been released from the law, having died to that which you were bound. So you cannot think that you are still alive to the law, no. Because that's what the devil wants to hold you to. We've died to the law already. The moment you believe in Jesus, you were nailed to the cross together with Jesus. So flowing from verse 1 to verse 3, therefore, my brethren, you also were made to die. What kind of tense is that? Past tense. Meaning what? Happened already. You were made to die to the law. What Paul is trying to tell us is that you don't have to obey the demands and the obligation of the law to be righteous. Now, we're not talking about sanctification yet. We're still talking about, we're not talking about sanctification. We're talking about justification now. All right? You've been justified already because you have died to the law. Now, you see, we can't obey the demand of the law in ourselves. Right? We already established the fact we can't match up to the full demand of the law. Because if you can, Jesus don't have to die for you. Jesus does not need to die for you. The truth is, we can't. Okay, the law is very strict. It states the minimum, it expects the maximum. You break one law, you break all the law. But we have died to the law. Therefore, there's no longer the need for us to meet the demand in order for us to be righteous. Right? And we are joined to God to bear fruit. Verse 4, in order that we might bear fruit for God. Now, immediately we talk about bearing fruit, he gives us a contrast straight away. Because while we're in the flesh, according to the sinful passion, we bear fruit for death. Verse 5 is a contrast. Can you see verse 5 is a contrast? Right, so it says that, for we were made to die in the, verse 4, through the body of Christ, meaning the death of Jesus, so that you might join to another. Let's talk about Jesus himself. Now, there's so that. Now, what is a so that? So that referring to result. Right? When you are made to die to the law through the body of Christ, the result is that you are joined to Christ. Now, then you come to this in order that. Now, in order that refers to the purpose. Right? You are joined to Christ, right, who was raised from the dead. Right? The purpose is that you may bear fruit. So verse 5 shows us the reverse. Verse 5 shows us that when we're in the flesh, we bear the fruit for death. But in Christ, we bear fruit for God. Verse 4 and 5 basically shows us that we died to the law, we joined to Jesus for the purpose of bearing fruit. There's no such thing as fruitless Christian. If you are truly died to yourself, alive in Christ, you will bear fruit. Because that's our destiny. Okay? Verse 6. But now we have been released from the law, having died to that which we were bounded, so that we serve in the newness of the Spirit and not in oldness of the letter. And we are released from the law to serve in the newness of the Spirit. Released, meaning we are freed. And we are freed from the law. That's the good news. We are free from the good news. We are free from the demands of the law already. Now, herein we must understand the word freedom. Freedom is not freedom to do anything. You see, we have this wrong idea about freedom. We think about freedom means you can do anything you want. Do you know that if you are free to do anything you want, you don't get freedom? You get chaos. Just think with me, if you are a driver, you have the freedom to anyhow drive. What happened to the traffic? Massive jam, because everybody anyhow drive. Can you imagine you watch a football match? There's freedom. So can you imagine you play halfway, 200 spectators join in and play against your side? Freedom, What kind of games are you going to watch? So you must understand biblical freedom is not the way the world defines freedom. Biblical freedom means that we are free from the obligation of the law to fulfill the obligation of the Spirit. We are free, the word so that. Okay, you see the so that? We are released so that, okay, which is the result, that we can serve in the newness of the Spirit. We are free from the obligation to the law so that we can follow the Spirit of God. Verse 7, what then shall we say? Is the law sin? May it never be. On the contrary, I will not come to know sin except through the law. For I would not have known about coveting if the law had not said, you shall not covet. But sin, taking opportunity through the commandment, produced in me coveting of every kind. For apart from the law, sin is dead. I was once alive apart from the law. But when the commandment came, sin became alive and I died. And this commandment, which was to result in life, proved to result in death for me. For sin, taking opportunity through the commandment, deceived me and through it killed me. So that the law is holy, the commandment is holy and righteous and good. Verse 7 says that we needed to die to the law. Now, does that mean that the law is bad? What's the answer? No, the law is not bad. Because in verse 12 tells us, the law is holy, the commandment is holy, righteous, and good. So the issue is not with the law. The issue is with sin. Sin took advantage of the law. Now, what's so good about the law? The law brings sins to light. You see, you would not have known sin except by the law. Law light up the sin around us. You see, there's no law, you won't know you are sinning. See, can you imagine you're driving on the highway? There's no speed limit. You just ram as fast as you want. The moment you see the word 100 kilometers, what happened to you? Suddenly you look at your speedometer, oh, 120, I better slow down, What happened? When you see the sign that says that 100 kilometers, suddenly you realize that you are speeding. The law brings sin life. All right? Now, why did Paul use you shall not covet. It's a very interesting law. You shall not covet is in the 10 Commandments, right? It's number what?
The 10
Number
commandments.
10. You shall not covet. But why? Why does he use such a sin, you know? Why not bring the big sin like murder, adultery, you know? Why bring you shall not covet? Because if you bring things like killing somebody, murdering somebody, and so forth, it will be very obvious, isn't it? Why would Paul bring such a sin that's not so obvious? Now, some of us will dismiss this as, oh yeah, he just gave an illustration. Let me suggest to you that this illustration is deliberate. It is not a random illustration. The Word of God, nothing in the Word of God is random. Everything is intentional. Paul used you shall not covet intentionally. Why? You see, if you use stealing, killing, murder, it is very obvious. All right? And you can find evidence to prove it. But it's not common. All right? But you are aware when you do it. If you kill somebody, you murder somebody, you know, right? But not coveting. Coveting is internal. It's not obvious. And it's hard to find evidence. How do you know I was coveting? Can you find evidence that I was coveting? You can't. Not that you can't, but it's very hard. Now, the other thing is coveting common? It's very common. And the thing is about coveting is that even the person himself may not realize it. And how would you realize it? You realize it by the law. The law alerts you to know that you are coveting. See, covetousness is internal, it's hard to prove, but it's very pervasive. That's why you see the prison, they will imprison people for killing, for stealing, for murdering. There's no prison for coveting. You know why? Then the whole city will be a prison. It's pervasive. And the more important reason is it is the matter of the heart. It is a matter of the heart. It's about sin. So continuing at verse 8, but sin taking opportunity through the commandment produced in me coveting of every kind. Because it is, so sin took advantage of it from something that's dormant, it brings alive and spread coveting within me. Right? But apart from the law, if there's no law, sin is dead. But sin came alive because of the law. Now, verse 11, all right? Sin took opportunity through the law to kill us. Now, verse 9, sorry, let me just come to verse 9 first. I was once alive apart from the law, but when the commandment came, sin became alive and I died. When was he alive apart from the law? Can you be alive apart from the law? From the Jewish custom, can. It's called bat baziva. I don't know how you pronounce that, but it's basically for them. It's a coming of age. That means when you're below 12 years old, the law does not apply to you. But when you hit 12 years old, a young man, a young boy or young girl, they will have to go through a ceremony. And in the ceremony, they will have a celebration. And usually, they need to make a trip to the temple. And in the temple, they will have a ritual. And from that day onwards, the child is responsible to obey the law. If you go to Israel, especially in December, you will see such celebration. You see families that will bring their children to the temple site, right? And they'll be having some ritual there to celebrate Bat Matziva, something like that. Okay, this is a celebration. I think even there for our Chinese also have. I know Teochew, they call it Chu Huang. Right? We have that similar thing, right? Where you reach a certain age, you're supposed to become an adult. It's a ritual. So in verse 9 it says that I was once alive apart from the law, meaning that when he was a young child, right? He was alive. But when the commandment came, that means from 12 years old onwards, sin became alive and I died. So this part definitely talk about before he was converted. Then we come about after conversion later, yeah? So sin took opportunity via the law. Now, let me explain to you about all these things about how sin become alive. Just to illustrate, the law is like a mirror. When you look at the mirror, you see your face. And when you look at your face, sometimes you can see your pimple. Right? The pimple is like the sin in your life. When you see the pimples in your life, what do? Some of us cannot take it. No. You must squeeze out the thing. Right? So that's exactly what the mirror and the sin is. The mirror is the word of God, the command. Pimples is the sin in our life. Because the mirror, it makes the sin obvious. And because you can see the pimple, you try to squeeze it, and then as a result, it causes more harm to your face. I'm just using this to illustrate to you the role of the law and sin, the role of the mirror and the pimples, the same effect. Right? Verse 13, therefore, did that which is good become a cause of death for me? May it never be. Rather, it was sin. It was the pimple, okay? In order that it might be shown to be sin by effecting my death through that which is good. So that through the commandment, sin will become utterly sinful. For we know that the law is spiritual, but I am of flesh, sold into bondage to sin. So verse 13 basically shows us which is good referred to the law. The law is not the cause of my death, right? But sin took advantage of the law. In order that, remember, in order that referred to purpose. Right? The purpose is of sin is to affect my death. Sin want to kill me. So that, right, the result of the commandment, sin become utterly sinful. For we know that law is spiritual, but I am of flesh, sold into the bondage to sin. Now we say law is spiritual. What comes to your mind when you use the word spiritual? Sometimes we use the word spiritual means when you say the word the person is more spiritual, what we are saying is that the person is more pious, more holy. But in this context, it is talking about the attribute of God. You see, how do I know? Because it's contrasting between spiritual and flesh. The contrast is spiritual. The law is spiritual, but I am of flesh. So that's the contrast. So the spiritual here refers to the attribute of God, as opposed to human as flesh. The word flesh in the Bible can mean three different ways. Flesh meaning physical, or flesh can mean carnal, or flesh can mean human nature. And in this particular case, it talks about human nature. Human nature that is bound, sold into the bondage to sin. Whereas the law is spiritual. The law is not bounded by sin. And so the law is like a mirror that can reveal sin, but cannot remove sin. The law is not meant to remove sin. The law is meant to tutor us about sin. Then how? How can we be free from sin? Look to someone who can come to fulfill the law and remove our sin. Look to the cross. Jesus came to restore us back to our destiny. We are the children of the King. We are crowned with glory and honor. But we sinned and we lost all our dignity and birthright. The law demands payment for sin, for our cosmic treason against God. Spiritual death for all eternity. But God loves us so much, sent his son to die for us, forgive us from the demand of the law, died to the law, alive to his grace, so that we can be joined to him to bear fruits. What I've just done is I just summarized verse 1 to verse 14 to you. Jesus took the crown back from the usurper, placed it back on our head. We are restored by the power of Jesus. We are free from the law. So you say, but Pastor, how come I still sin? I still do what I don't want to. I will answer that. Let's take a 5 minutes break. Okay, is the screen shared already? Yep, okay. So let me just quickly recap 6 things about the law. First, the law is binding until death. Right? As a Jewish believer, they need to follow the law in order to get right. That's what they think. And Paul is helping them to say that actually we can never fulfill the law. But when you are died to yourself, you're no longer obligated to the law. That's why we are dead to the law. And we are free from the law, right? Now, law brings sin to life because you only know sin through the law. And law brings sin to light. And when we come to light, when sin came, I died. And then lastly, law is good, but cannot save. Then we move on to the next part. And that's where we talk about this verse 15 onwards. Very familiar scriptures people like to quote because it talks about the human struggle. All right, for what I am doing, I do not understand. For I'm not practicing what I would like to do. But I'm doing the very thing I hate. But if I do the very thing I do not want to do, I agree with the law, confessing that the law is good. So now, no longer am I the one doing it, but sin which dwells in me. Now, verse 15, continuing from verse 14, to remind us that we are all in our flesh sold into the bondage to sin. Bondage causes us to do what I hate. Verse 16 tells us that I'm conscious of the goodness of the law. Now, verse 17 is interesting. Verse 17 says, so now, no longer am I the one doing it, but sin which dwells in me. If you read at it again, what does it sound like? It sounds a bit like blaming sin. Right? Now, here you must understand who writes verse 17. Is it written by a young man or is it written by a man of God? So we know that Paul is a man of God, right? So Paul wasn't referring to blaming sin. He was echoing the fact that he is in bondage. Unlike a young man will say that, oh, I sin because I do bad things because sin make me do it. Reminds me of a young boy. He slapped his sister. The mother was very angry. Mother said, how can you slap your sister? Then young boy said, I didn't slap my sister. My hand slapped my sister. So the mother was very angry. The mother said, okay, you are not grounded, but your hand is grounded. And just to show us that human nature, we're very easy to blame something. But that's not the intent of verse 17. Verse 17 wasn't blaming sin. Verse 17 was trying to tell us we are in bondage to sin. Got a picture? Okay, then we move on to verse 18. Verse 18, for I know that nothing good dwells in me. He's continuing to confess and recognize the bondage that is in my flesh. For the willing is present in me, but the doing of the good is not. For the good that I want, I do not do. But I practice the very evil that I do not want. But if I'm doing the very thing I do not want, I'm no longer the one doing it, but sin which dwells in me. He's not excusing himself. He is confessing the human bondage, the human struggle with sin. Verse 18 tells us the awareness of sinfulness. The closer we get to the Lord, the more sin aware you are. For people who say that, oh, I'm not a big sinner, there are people who are more sinful than I. The person who say that is not very spiritual. Because the truth is, the more you walk with God, the closer you walk with God, the more self-aware you are about the sinfulness of your own sin. Do I have an illustration for you? I'm going to give you a quick illustration about Paul. Galatians 1:1, Paul says, Paul, an apostle, not sent from men nor through the agency of man, but through Jesus Christ and God the Father who raised him from the dead. Galatians is written in the AD 48. Now, does this sound a bit arrogant? I, Paul, an apostle, not from man, but not from any club, but by Jesus. AD 48. Then he comes to 1 Corinthians 15. When he talks about himself, he says, I am the least of the apostles and not fit to be called an apostle because I persecuted the church. AD 53, 57, during that period. That is about a good 9 years apart. From someone who says that I'm an apostle to someone, I'm the least of the apostle. In fact, I'm not even worthy to be called an apostle. After 10 years of walking with God, he recognized who he is. That's not the end. When you go right to 1 Timothy, it is a trustworthy statement deserving full acceptance that Christ Jesus came into the world to save sinners, among whom I'm the foremost of all. Some translation, I'm the worst sinner. It's written in AD 64, 65. So what do you see? The longer he walked with God, the more he realized there is nobody. That he is the worst sinner. The more we walk with the Lord, it should help us to be more aware of our sinfulness. But you see some Christians, the more they walk with God, the more become very proud. They caught the wrong spirit. Because the more you walk closer to the Lord, the more you see how great God is, the more you know how holy he is, the natural reaction is to know how sinful we are, how horrible we are, in the light of who he is. Not comparing with somebody else. In fact, someone who compares himself with others is very self-conscious. But a person who walks with God is very God-conscious. And that's something I want to encourage all of us. Reflect on our life. Reflect on it doesn't matter how long you've been a Christian. I mean, I can tell people I've been a pastor for 30 years. The question is, so what? Is it 30 years of growing in the Lord or 30 years of backsliding? I hope I reflect more and more of Jesus to the people around me. I hope. Because I'm human, I fail. Or I will fail. Right? So I can encourage all of us as fellow sojourners in this faith. Let's inspire, let's encourage one another to draw closer to the Lord and let God change us from the inside out. As we grow closer to the Lord, we'll know how great he is and how much we need him. So verse 19, for the good I want, I do not do, but I practice the very evil that I do not want. All right, so it's going to talk about the practice of sinfulness in our life. Verse 20, if you have not realized, verse 20 is a repeat of verse 17. I'm no longer the one doing it, but sin which dwells in me. Talking about the constant struggle of the two nature. Now there's a comparison chart of what I want and what is real. I'm not going to give you the answer. I would like you to do it yourself. Why? Because I'm a Bible teacher. I want you to learn the Bible for yourself. If I keep giving you the answer, I'm not helping you to find the answer yourself. All right? So this part, I will skip. You're going to do it as your own homework, okay? The answer is all there. You're going to check it out yourself. Verse 21, I found then the principles of that evil is present in me, the one who wants to do good. For I joyfully concur with the law of God in the inner man. But I see a different law in the members of my body, waging war against the law of my mind, and making me a prisoner of the law of sin, which is in my bodies, in my members. Wretched man that I am, who will set me from the body of this death? Thanks be to God through Jesus Christ our Lord. So that on one hand, I myself with my mind am serving the law of God, and on the other, my flesh, the law of sin. Verse 21 to 25, I conclude this part for us before we go into chapter 8. Verse 21 tells us the reality of the evil inside us. But verse 22 tells us, but we are aligned to the law of God in the inner man. So the outer man may be serving the law of sin, but the inner man is aligned to the law of God. Verse 23 basically tells us we are still prisoners of these two laws. It's a reality of the human struggle. And that's why we need sanctification. All right, remember, I shared with you, chapter 7 is about telling us about the struggle. We need to struggle. And it is in the sanctifying work of the Spirit that you can see victory over the power of sin. Verse 14 is actually a desperate cry. Wretched man that I am. I'm basically, another way to say is, I am desperate, I'm helpless, I'm hopeless. And then verse 25 is the solution. Jesus in me will set me free. Now, chapter 7 sounded very dark. If you remember, it's all about the law and it's very dark. And you're right. Okay? Because the light only happens at verse 25. The light comes at verse 25. You need to see the darkness of our human struggle to appreciate the light. Verse 24 is a desperate plea in the light of the darkness. And verse 25, the bright light bursts forth. And in order for us to know more about verse 25, you must come back next week, where we cover chapter 8. All right? Next week, we will cover chapter 8. But tonight, I want to end up by answering 3 questions. Was it written about Paul, or was it written for all of us? Because the pronoun is I. Secondly, was it written about Paul before conversion or after conversion? Then lastly, is it written about regular struggle or continuous struggle? So let me answer that, and then I'll sum up with a picture. First, because even though it talks about the pronouns of I, it is meant to communicate a common struggle for all. Remember, Paul is a very good Bible teacher. He talks about I so that take away the pressure from you. But you resonate with the struggle. That's what he's trying to do. Now, was he writing about pre-conversion or post-conversion? What's the answer? Both. Verse 19 tells us, I was once alive apart from the law, but when the commandment came, sin became alive and I died. Past tense. Talking about pre-conversion. Then he says in verse 14, for we know that the law is spiritual, but I am of flesh, sold into the bondage of sin. I am of flesh. I'm still in this human nature. Still stuck in sin. All right? So it is both about our human struggle. Pre-conversion, we have the struggle. Post-conversion, we also have the struggle. The question is it a regular until kingdom come? Or is it something that we can find freedom? So that's where you need to come to see these 3 terms. All right? Justification, sanctification, glorification. Justification basically means that Jesus has fully paid for the penalty of sin. Amen? That's why it's very easy. We are all justified. If you believe in Jesus, you are justified. You don't have to follow the demands of the law to be right with God. Because you believe in God. Because you know you can't fulfill the law. And therefore you believe in Jesus, you are justified. Glorified. We know but it's in the future. We only know when it happens. That's justification, glorification, not difficult to hold it. Our challenge is sanctification. Because we don't really understand. And the truth is that we are still struggling with some issues on this side of earth. And some of us get discouraged because of the lack of victory over sin. So allow me to show you an example to illustrate the process of sanctification. What do you see? They are same room, same house. One is very untidy, one is very neat. Correct? What happened? So I tell you what happened, okay? This is the room of a young girl. Right? On your right, huh? She was alone, single. And the day came, he found a boyfriend. Oh, got boyfriend already. I want to bring my boyfriend home. Oh, cannot, my bed very untidy. Quickly tidy up the bed. Then she tidy up the bed, realized, but not just the bed need to be tidied, no, I need to clear up the rubbish. Not only I need to clear up the rubbish, I need to tidy the room. And eventually, slowly, but the room is totally changed. What's the cause? A newfound love. Same for our life. When Jesus comes into our life and become the lover of our soul, and Jesus will start to tell you, get this part of your room clean up, get this part of your room clean up. Slowly but surely, room by room, it will be tidied up. Does it happen overnight? It does not happen overnight. But it does happen. Room by room. Amen? That's called sanctification. Some changes are supernaturally fast. Some is painfully slow. But eventually, they will all show up. Some victory is very obvious. I remember when I became a Christian, I stopped smoking immediately. And when I became a Christian, I stopped scolding vulgar words almost immediately. But some sin in my life took a longer time. Like my anger issue, like my addiction to porn, it took some time. But there's a difference between committing a sin due to the moment of weakness versus willful sinning. Let me repeat that for all of us. In this journey of sanctification, it does not mean that we will be sinless. It only means that we will sin less. And there's a difference between committing a sin versus willful sinning. What's the difference? One due to a moment of weakness, one is deliberate disobedience. But in this journey on this side of heaven, hopefully we will grow towards godliness and we have less willful sinning. Of course, hopefully less committing sin as well. But it's a process. Now, today, am I tempted by cigarettes? No. You can dangle a cigarette in front of me. I'm not tempted means I'm not tempted. But there are certain things that I will be tempted. So these are areas that I need God's help. All right, so coming back to this part again. So long as we are on this side of heaven, we will work in progress. Sanctification is needed. And how do you experience victory in sanctification? I'll show you with the last graph, last picture. But let me just do a summary of today's lesson first. So we talk about the law is binding until death. We are dead to the law, but we are free from the law. Law brings sins to life, and law brings sin to light. Law is good, but cannot save. And then the last part basically shows us the struggle of two natures. Right? And then finally, verse 25 tells us the freedom of God, the freedom in Christ. You need to come to chapter 8 to understand more. Now, I like to show us another two pictures to illustrate our Christian life. Now, what happened to you that you became a Christian? What transpired for you to become a Christian? What happened? When you believe in Jesus, right? You believe by faith, isn't it? How many of you believe by works? I come to church, I pay my tithe, then I become a Christian. Nobody, right? How you become a Christian? You become a Christian by faith in God. Why am I saying that? Again, two pictures. All right, this is just a visual reminder to all of us. A sailboat against a rowboat. God called us to trust Him by following the guidance of the Holy Spirit, and which is the sailboat, to catch the wind and then we can move. But we have turned ourselves into a rowboat. We throw in the sail and we start rowing. Why do I say that? Because when you became a Christian, you became a Christian by faith in Jesus, isn't it? So what you did is you really, the sailboat. You were the sailboat. You live by faith in God. But you have turned from faith in God to become working for God. A lot of us, after becoming a Christian, we go to church and then we hear people, oh, must read your Bible, must do this, must do that. Now, I'm not saying all these things are not important, but unknowingly that become our works for God. And we start to row the boat. We start to row very hard. We all started our relationship with God by faith in Jesus. But we ended up to have works to please God. That summarizes many of us. Right? You ask a new Christian to come out and to share a testimony. What do you usually hear? You usually will hear them telling us about what God did for them. But you ask a 10-year-old Christian to come and give testimony. What will be telling us? They'll be telling us what they have done for Jesus. Right? Why? We have moved from a sailboat to the rowboat. Our struggle is due to us moving back to the law of the flesh, which resulted in frustration and tiredness. You see, our deliverance is not by working harder. Our deliverance is not by trying harder. Our deliverance is never by how hard you work. Our deliverance comes from God. You see, Paul tried in his flesh. We have tried in our flesh, and we know that we all have failed. It's never about trying harder. Reminded me of a prayer of a young man who said this. He cried out to God, God, forgive me. If you forgive me, I will never sin again. I feel for such prayer. I feel sorry for him. Sorry in a different way, you know. What was the focus? I will not sin again. What is that? Self-effort. What is that? Confidence in your flesh. Your flesh will always fail you. Rather, we should say, Lord, please forgive me. Please cleanse me. I've sinned again. Help me, Lord. I cannot do this in my strength. Chapter 8 will unpack that for us because it is impossible to be Christian apart from the Holy Spirit. We need the Holy Spirit. Come back next week. I'll share with you more about the role of God in our lives to help us to live the victorious life. It is not about how hard. It is about how much you allow God to do a work in us. That's why tonight we're going to end off with this same worship song, Yet Not I, but Through Christ in Me. So can I invite all of us to stand? And those of us on site and those of you at home, please allow the words of this song to resonate in your heart, because it is really not about ourselves, but everything about what God can do in us.
There's no more. What gift of grace is Jesus, my Redeemer? steadfast love, my deep and boundless peace. To this I hold, my hope is only Jesus. For my life is wholly bound to His. Oh, how strange and divine, I can sing all is mine, yet not I, but through Christ in me. The night is dark, but I am not forsaken. For by my side, the Savior, He will stay. I labor on in weakness and rejoicing. For in my need, His power is displayed. To this I hold, my shepherd will defend me. Through the deepest valley He will lead. Oh, the night has been won, and I shall overcome, yet not I, but through Christ in me. No fate I dread, I know I am forgiven. The future sure, the price it has been paid. For Jesus bled and suffered for my pardon, and He was raised to overthrow the grave. To this I hold, my sin has been defeated. Jesus now and ever is my plea. Oh, the chains are released, I can sing, I am free, and not I, but through Christ in me. With every breath, I long to follow Jesus, for He has said that He will bring me home. And day by day, I know He will renew me, until I stand with joy before the throne. To this I hold, my hope is only Jesus. All the glory evermore to Him. When the race is complete, still my lips shall repeat, yet not I, but through Christ in me. To this I hold, my hope is only Jesus. All the glory evermore to Him. When the race is complete, still my lips shall repeat, yet not I, but through Christ in me. When the race is complete, still my lips shall repeat, yet not I, but through Christ in me. Yet not I, but through Christ in me. Yet not I, but through Christ in me.
Lord, we want to thank you that in Jesus we shall overcome. We thank you that, Lord, that you have promised us that you will bring us home. from the time we believe in you until we finish our race on earth, you are with us to help us, to prune us, to transform us, so that we can become more and more like Jesus until we see you face to face. Because you are a good God. You will never leave us nor forsake us, but you will help us step by step, experiencing the sanctification that you have intended for all of us, so that all the skeletons, all the secrets in our lives can be dealt with one by one, so that we can be truly free to worship you, so that we can truly be transformed in you. We thank you, Lord. There's truly not I, but through Christ in us. We thank you for your word, and we commit ourselves afresh to you and help the ask of you, Lord. Help us to hold tightly to Jesus all the days of our life. For we pray all this together in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless you. W.O.W Wednesday is over. See you all next week to hear the good news of chapter 8.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor.